Well, hi, welcome. My name is Donna Ristigian Mack, and this is Inspiring Voice, or iVoice Communication. We're a company dedicated to creating healthy human business connections through high-level effective communication. I'm the founder, I'm the president, and I am very happy to have you with me today, along with my guest, Mr. Bill Eddy. Bill, it is absolutely wonderful to have you with us.
Thanks so much, Donna. I'm glad to be on with you.
Bill, among many, many other things, is the co founder and the chief innovation officer of the High Conflict Institute, based out of the West Coast of the United States of America. And basically, what they do at the High Conflict Institute is they train professionals how to deal with high conflict personalities and high conflict situations. And I'm thinking, Bill, after saying these words, I think we all should maybe straighten our spine and take a nice deep breath. Because I think, and tell me if you agree, we're dealing with more conflict now than ever. I know stress is up, right? Anxiety is up. And would you say conflict is on the increase as well because stress and anxiety are up?
Yes, interpersonally, at home, at work, in the community, and believe it or not, online. So
Yeah.
we're really, all the professionals I work with, lawyers, therapists, mediators, judges, etc., say it's really gone up. Human resources, just the emotional tension in the air is so thick you could cut it.
Now, we can't change what has transpired up till this point. However, it is, I believe, healthy to get to the root of the problem, right? To at least be aware of the root of the problem as best as you can. So, how would you describe what you feel as though is the root of the problem? I'm going to guess you're going to start with the fact that we've just endured almost 2 years now of, the great pandemic.
Yes, I would say two things, and
Mm,
and the balance has really tipped. One is much less real people contact, three-dimensional people, smiling people, friendly neighbors, friendly coworkers, the routine stuff that our minds and bodies need to feel good. Just we're human social beings, and so we've really lost a lot of that for almost 2 years. At the same time, we've had, I would call it a news overdose,
mm,
that we are at home, we see more news, Facebook, television, just radio, all of that with news. And it's
mhm.
basically bad news, the worst news from the farthest away places in the world. And there's a limit to how much you can manage that before you go numb or yell at somebody that's sitting next to you.
It's so funny that you're saying this because I was just speaking with someone the other day and they were talking about current events, right? All the various things they had seen on the news and it was pretty heavy, and immediately I just felt this heaviness in my body. And I looked at them and I said, "So was there anything good that happened today?" And I did remind them that, watching the news, if you watch, say, the first 15 minutes of the news, what they're giving you, these are like the 8 worst things that have happened all across our universe today, as opposed to, what's going well in our world, what's going well in our society.
Yeah, there's something that just keeps coming up for me now, and that's some research by John and Julia Gottman, the marriage therapists. And what they say is a healthy, happy marriage has a 5-to-1 ratio of positive interactions to negative interactions. Everybody has some negative interactions, that's part of life, but a healthy balance is 5-to-1. And I'm starting to think that's what our news ratio should be, that we should learn about, the junior high school kid who won the science fair and what it was, and the team that finally came from last place to first place, that we should have a 5-to-1 positive to negative. Then we can manage the negative and actually do something about it.
Mhm. Do you see our minds, right? Our brains defaulting to the negative? I help a lot of people with situations like fear of speaking, right? Fear of speaking, fear of presenting and communicating one on one very often with people. And one of the first things I ask them is, what are you saying to yourself? Right.
Right.
And what I have found over the years through my experience is so many people, again, defaulting to the negative as opposed to defaulting to the positive. They're fearing things that may not have even happened, right? Even have transpired up till this particular point. And I often do my best to remind them to take some time to remember who they are
Yeah.
as opposed to who they're not and some of the mistakes perhaps that they've made in the past. Do you think something like that might help people as
Oh,
they move forward personally and professionally?
absolutely. I think we need to realize two things. One is that we mirror each other. There's mirror neurons in the brain
Yes.
that make us mirror not just the behavior of other people, but the moods of other people. And it's often we're just unaware of it. The example I like to give, have you ever been like with a group of people sitting around a table and one of them crosses their arms and then you notice two or three other people do? None of it's conscious, but we mirror the happy face, the negative face. But the other thing is, we, as you're saying, can choose what we think. And so we can change our own thoughts to more positive thoughts and interpret things. How can I make this into something productive or manageable? And so, not mirroring the other person's negativity, but putting out our own positivity. Like that's our ear statement method that we developed with High Conflict Institute is empathy, attention, and respect. Give that to somebody, and hopefully they will mirror your positivity and not stay stuck in the negativity. So I think it's that combination that can really turn things around for both people.
Mhm. I love this, and this is exactly, Bill, the way I wanted to start. Okay, you mentioned the EAR concept, an acronym, EAR. One more time, can you tell us what EAR describes and how you work that, how you actually take this tool? Because to me, it is such a valuable tool in business and in life.
Yes. So EAR stands for empathy, attention, and respect.
Right.
And what we've done is turned it into a technique. We call it an ear statement. So you say a sentence that shows empathy, or a sentence that shows attention, or a sentence that shows respect to another person who may be sad, may be frustrated, may be angry with you,
Hmm.
and you go, I can understand how frustrating this is, or I feel that way sometimes too, or I hear that this is not the way you want it to go. And
Hmm.
so that's empathy. Or I'll pay attention. Tell me more. I want to understand. Or I really respect the work you've been doing. I appreciate the energy you put into this project or this committee or this family, whatever it is. Just a sentence or two
Yeah.
can just immediately calm. Like within 30 seconds, I'd say 90% of the time, an ear statement calms a conversation, reduces the negativity in it.
I love this. Even if you disagree,
Yes.
because very often somebody is making a statement and the default position is, I disagree, and here's why I disagree, as opposed to taking time to take a breath and to just be with that person to hear more. I may still disagree on the other side, but I'm going to take time, and I respect you enough to take time to be where you are and to learn more.
Yeah, yeah. So what it does is it puts us on the same team.
Yeah.
So instead of butting heads, we're on the same team, and team members can disagree. And sometimes that really comes to new ideas, new plans. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that. Well,
Mhm.
let's do this then. So that the key thing I think today is this feeling that we're not on the same team. And so it's okay to really disrespect the other person, or, just consider them to be an evil other. And therefore, I can say and do anything, instead of, well, what if this was my sister? How would I talk to her? Of course, that's if you're on speaking terms with your
You read my mind.
sister.
Yeah,
And it,
sometimes it's even more challenging with family members, isn't it?
it can be because we
Mm.
have more automatic responses. Though in the Calming Upset People with EAR book, I put in family examples: parent, child, uh, parent, uh, workplace, just all of these different types of confrontations. But yeah, within the family, sometimes it's the hardest because we're just so quick to react.
Mhm.
And it's like, whoa, that's not what I want to do. And one person can change the whole tone of the conversation. That's the key thing, is one person can do that.
These are wonderful skills to learn at an early age. And I'm thinking about something that many of us, my colleagues and myself discuss quite often. And that is our theory that managing people inside the workplace, right? Leading and managing people is so very often like raising a family, right? Like
Yes.
raising children, like raising individuals, because we say, you could have 6 kids and they might all look very similar, right? But at the end of the day, we know very quickly that each one is an individual.
Hmm.
And it's super important to be able to attune yourself to each one as an individual and to make them feel like they are heard, right? Like
Yeah.
they are valued and their contributions matter. And they don't always have to agree. We want to hear from them as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that 5-to-1 ratio means we do need some of that disagreement, some of that negativity to nudge us beyond where we are.
Hmm.
But we don't need to drown in it, and that's the thing. But yeah, treating each person as an individual, ear statements help you really open up communication, I think, with anybody. And we deal with so many strangers today. I mean, in the workplace, just over the phone, on Zoom, uh, meetings, all of that. We're meeting so many people that if we start out creating a positive environment, I think that can really help. And you mentioned starting as early as possible. I tried to write this book so it would appeal to high school students as well as adults,
Hmm.
because they really deal with so much negativity, and they don't really have tools. And this helps them tell themselves, because I say you can give yourself an ear statement: I'm okay, and that's not about me. What he just said isn't about me, it's about him.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Don't take it personally.
Yep,
Right. Right.
exactly.
Whatever their energy is, whatever they're bringing to the table, it's not necessarily about you, it's about them.
Yeah.
You just said something, Bill, also about the importance of, being open to other ideas, which reminds me of a book I recently read called Think Again.
Hmm.
Think Again by a gentleman named Adam Grant. And he works at the Wharton School based out of the University of Pennsylvania. And he talks about the fact that, there are so many closed minded people. And he really does point to a lot of brilliant people. Because think about it, after X amount of years of school, you have your bachelor's degree, you might have your master's, you might have your PhD. You get to a particular point where you do have a lot of knowledge. But he talks about the importance of always, forever being open to learning and growing and hearing new ideas. I'm going to guess that you encounter close minded people quite often, as opposed to people who are more open and have the ability to think again. Am I right?
Oh, yeah. Well, with the High Conflict Institute, we're really teaching professionals to deal with high conflict employees, clients, coworkers, uh, all of that. and legal cases. That's where we really got started.
Mm.
And what we're seeing is that they have really an all or nothing perspective. But what's interesting is that's just part of who they are. And if we can calm things enough, because they're quickly defensive, if we can calm things enough and connect with them, like with ear statements and such, then there's a chance that they're going to use their little bit more open-minded parts and maybe be able to hear us. So I see it as it's kind of a proportional thing that they may be mostly closed-minded, but I haven't yet met someone who's 100% closed-minded.
Mhm.
Maybe 98, but but a lot of it is defensiveness. So a lot of our techniques are to calm the conflict so people are less defensive because it's really seems like a different part of the brain that protects you from threats versus encourages you to be open, creative, try changes, etc. So I mean the brain is just it's humongous in what it can do, but what we've learned is we need to calm the conflict, then much more positive can come. And these techniques help with that.
So, high conflict people, let me see if I have this right, might be more defensive and might be doing their best to protect themselves from threat. Do I have that right?
From perceived threat. In other words,
Well, and that's the question. What
yeah,
are they perceiving? How and why do they feel as though they're being threatened?
well, part of it is actually physiological. Some people, say with personality disorders, have a larger amygdala, right amygdala, that reads facial expressions and tone of voice as more threatening than it's intended, than most people would interpret it. So there's kind of a bias, and often that comes from being abused as a child
Mm,
or growing up with total freedom, not learning how to get along with people. So, whenever somebody else doesn't want to share their scissors with you, it feels like a big threat because you've never had to share before. So
mhm,
we get people who grew up abused and people who grew up entitled, and and they often feel defensive in everyday situations. And I think it's about 10% of adults who have these high conflict personalities. And it's partly really just development. And some can change and some seem not able to, but it's worth a
mm,
try. And
mhm.
that's our approach with different techniques.
And for the average person listening or viewing today, Bill, I often remind people you can't change anyone. You can't change anyone. All you can do is do your best to either change or fortify yourself. So why don't we spend the last few minutes here and talk about really, I don't want to use the word protecting, but maybe I do want to use the word protecting yourself and strengthening yourself from somebody you would consider a high conflict personality.
Yeah, so part of it's your self-talk.
Mm,
And so giving yourself ear statements, Bill, you're doing pretty good, given the circumstances. Or I can understand this is a stressful time, Bill. So, of course you're tired or frustrated or whatever. These are unusual times. So you can give yourself some empathy, a pat on the back, um, and maybe take some time, pay attention to yourself. So I like journaling, I'll write about my frustrations, and in 2 or 3 minutes, they're almost gone because I can see them. Oh, that's all it is. And respect yourself. You've gotten this far, you've done a lot of things right, um, and your commitment and your effort really matter. So you can give yourself ear statements. Also, I think taking time, take a break. My wife and I like to go hiking in the woods, in the mountains. So we take trips where we're away from the world and have peaceful nature around us. And that really helps me do this kind of work. but also really understanding other people aren't this way on purpose. And
Mm.
that's helped me so much, is to realize, personalities are formed the first 5 or 6 years of life mostly. And so people don't get to pick their personality, it just evolves. As an adult, they may make some changes, but the most difficult people lack self-awareness. That's part of the personality. So they don't try to change, and they're preoccupied with blaming others because they can't see that they're part. They don't connect the dots. And so I have a lot of empathy. I worked with psychiatric patients in a psychiatric hospital, people with head injuries, people with schizophrenia. I have a lot of empathy for people who had no control over their circumstances, at least mostly until now. So that helps me really stay not only positive but energetic about doing this kind of work.
This is so wonderful to hear. And you can tell, in addition to your capabilities in the world of law as an attorney, that you're also a licensed clinical social worker.
Right. That's true. And actually, people ask which came first. And I first was the licensed clinical social worker.
That's your
So,
core.
yeah, and that's helped me tremendously as a lawyer, help people resolve conflicts, a lot of it through mediation, because legal disputes don't have to have a judge. You can resolve them yourself with some assistance in many cases.
I love that. I often have conversations with my colleagues about the various habits we bring into the world. For example, being a communication coach, there's a big habit out there that I see quite often with both genders, with men and women, with everybody, and that is avoiding conflict.
Yeah.
Right? Shying away from conflict as opposed to doing your best to lean into conflict. And as we know, easier said than done when
Yeah.
you lean into conflict. But I think, and tell me if you agree, that's where it begins. Instead of thinking of that high conflict personality as someone who is wrong or bad or scary even, to realize that everybody has their own story and what they're bringing to the table so often, like you said, originates early on in life, and they might have these habits, um, and they didn't choose to have these habits. They often are moving forth in life because of old conditioning, right?
Right.
Because of old conditioning, and you also mentioned self-awareness.
Yes.
And they really can't move forth any differently until they tap into their own self-awareness
Right.
and realize that nobody can change them except themselves, just like nobody can change you except yourself.
Right, right, absolutely. And so we teach people, don't try to change them,
No.
adapt your approach,
Hmm.
manage the relationship. There's two questions we teach people to ask themselves. People say, do you think I'm a high conflict person? I say, if you can answer these two questions, then you'll know. The first question is, what's my part in this conflict? It might be a small part. It may be that I chose to work with this person or I chose this person for a partner. But what's my part? And the second is, what can I do differently in the future from what I've learned from this? And if you can answer both of those with information and not just defensiveness, then you're not going to be a high conflict person,
Love that.
because how conflict people blame others, don't work on themselves.
100% responsibility. I mean,
Yes,
even if you aren't responsible for 100% of the conflict, that
yes,
is often what I remind people. Take 100% responsibility for what you are responsible for.
right, your part.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
it.
Yeah, I love that. I love
Those
that.
are, and those people go, all right, I think I got to remember to do
Yeah.
that.
Okay, we're going to wrap up just a few minutes here. We're going to do it quickly. There are 5 types of people who ruin your life. There are 5 types of people who really? Oh my goodness. Can we go through them ever so quickly and how to spot them and how to deal with them? What's the first one that comes to mind, Bill?
Well, they all share being high conflict people because they're preoccupied with blaming others.
Yes.
They have a lot of all or nothing thinking, unmanaged emotions, and often extreme behaviors. So all 5 of these have those in common. Then there's narcissistic personalities, the ones that are high conflict. Then there's borderline high conflict people, which have the wide mood swings, the sudden intense anger. Then there's the antisocial high conflict people who will lie, cheat, steal, deceive, take advantage without a conscience.
Ouch.
Then there's the histrionic, dramatic. It's like, oh my goodness, the ones that just suck the whole office attention. Um, and we see that in programs with names like that. And then there's the
Mhm.
paranoid high conflict person who sees them as dangerous and think there's conspiracies or there's just people out to get them, and so they're going to blame them first. So those 5, and in the book, 5 types of people who can ruin your life. I give detail about each of those and how to manage your relationship with them or steer clear of them if that's an option.
Mhm. Mhm. Almost always an option because sometimes being the passive communicator and walking away from situations that you have no control over whatsoever is the right decision to make.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
People feel like everyone is reasonable, and therefore, if I just can persuade them to my point of view, everything will be fine. And that's not the way human beings seem to work. And you can't persuade high conflict people. You can just make them more upset, which then makes you more upset. So better to
Hmm.
manage the relationship or steer clear.
Yes, that's the vicious cycle that we want to avoid. I think your goal very often is probably my goal too, which is to create the healthy cycle, right? To create the
Yes.
healthy human connections.
And it can be done. Each individual can turn a negative into a positive. We have that ability.
Hmm. I love that. Well, how can people get a hold of you if they would like more information about you, your institute, and your many, many books that you have either authored or co-authored? I know you do speaking and certainly training as well, Bill.
Yeah, so we're highconflictinstitute.com, www.highconflictinstitute.com. We have training, we do consultation, we have a lot of videos, so there's self-directed training. And my books, we have all the books there. They're also all available on Amazon. So we're easy to find.
And EAR is the new one. I'm reading it right now, about 3/4 of the way through, Bill, and it is fabulous. Thank you so much for doing the work. And thank you so much for doing all the work you have done over the years to get to this point in your life.
Well, thank you so much, Donna, and best wishes with your work and your communication with your people.
Thank you so much. I'm Donna Ristigian Mack from iVoice Communication. I am an executive communication coach, a workforce trainer, a motivational speaker, and very proud to oversee iVoice Communication, a company dedicated to creating healthy human connections through high level effective communication at work. Bill Eddy, one more time, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Donna.